I open my eyes to complete darkness. I can't really call it waking up, since I don't consider the short and fitful bouts of unconsciousness that I sometimes manage at night to be legitimate sleep. I'm not even sure I slipped into that last night. As if being responsible for the 107 marked ones wasn't stressful enough, at least it's been merely heart-rending when any of them have died. As of today, I'll probably have yet another person I'm responsible for, and if she dies on my watch, then General Sgaeyl will have me killed. I wouldn't be overly concerned about that if it weren't for the fact that the revolution would likely die with me as well. And if Brennan's to be believed, then that would probably result in the entire continent falling to Dark Wielders in less than a few years. Otherwise, death would almost be a welcome reprieve, since my life has been one long nightmare ever since Sgaeyl came crashing through it. Cadet Ryerson, I'm calling in the favor you owe me for allowing your marked ones a chance in the Riders Quadrant. I remember the orders General Sgaeyl gave me 6 months ago perfectly. My youngest daughter Violet will be joining you all in the quadrant on the next conscription day, and it will be your responsibility to ensure that she survives. Why does she keep her mental shields up even in her office? As far as she's aware, there should be no possible way that an intrinsic like me could have escaped execution to be able to read her thoughts, or intentions, whatever. I almost never come across someone that I can't read, and even when I do, they'll at least let their guard down in private some of the time. General Sgaeyl is the only person who's had her shields up every single time I've ever seen her since developing my second signet, with the exception of Melgren and a couple of others that I've only interacted with once or twice since then. What? How the fuck am I supposed to do that? I accuse. That's your problem, not mine. You expect me to step in if she's losing a challenge? I scoff. I'd be executed for breaking the codex, and you can bet that my reason for intervening would be uncovered, which would put both her and even you in danger. General Sgaeyl sighs. I didn't think that I'd need to explain that you can't violate the Riders' Codex in any obvious way for that exact reason. If I have to spell out the details that should be clear, then how about this? As long as Violet crosses the parapet on her own, then, outside of challenges, you're not to let anyone kill her, or allow her to die of her own naivete. She's spent her entire life up until now training to be a scribe. She'll only have 6 months to prepare for the Riders' Quadrant, so she'll be woefully underprepared. And you expect me to provide all of the preparation most candidates get over a decade or more in the 1 year I'll have left in the quadrant? I asked sardonically. She's a fast learner. And how am I supposed to ensure she survives the rest of her time in the quadrant after I've graduated? I challenge. You should know by now that I'm not an unreasonable commander, Cadet Ryerson, her tone suggesting that this conversation bores her. As long as Violet survives to become a second-year rider, I'll consider your debt to me to be repaid. And as this is the favor you owe me, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that if you fail and she dies, so do you. You're dismissed. And now conscription day has come. So in all likelihood, for the next year, my life will be tied to that of Violet fucking Sgaeyl, the daughter of the woman who was responsible for the death of my father and his revolution to save the continent. Granted, her son turned out to be a decent guy, but based on what I've dug up about Violet, Colonel Markham had hand-picked her to be his star pupil and eventual successor as the head of the scribes, responsible for keeping everyone in Navarre ignorant to the fact that dark-wielding Venin even exist. If that absolute piece of filth thinks that she's the best person to follow in his footsteps, then I have no hope that Violet is anything like Brennan, no matter what he might say about her. It's not like he's impartial. Plus, he hasn't really known her since she was a child, so even if she was a decent person around age 10 when he left for the Riders' Quadrant, apparently over the second half of her life, Markham has warped her into someone he wouldn't recognize. There's no hint of light on the horizon yet, so considering that it's the middle of summer, it must be fucking early. There's only one thing to do. Being able to see others' intentions, mostly in the form of pictures, gives me a half-second's advantage over anyone else in a fight. But if the flyers are to be believed, Venin can adapt to an adversary's fighting style in a matter of seconds, not to mention all of their other purported abilities, so other riders aren't the important benchmark. If I hope to be able to beat the Venin that I'll inevitably come up against one day, I need to be so much better than any rider that it should be no contest. I roll out of bed and head to the gym. Several hours later, I'm stationed at the top of the turret that opens onto the parapet as a storm begins brewing. The first dozen or so candidates have already made their way up the tower and across the parapet into the quadrant, or not, in the case of 2 of them so far. I do my best to keep from looking into their eyes or reading their intentions in an effort not to humanize them in my mind. Half of them will be dead a year from now, and a decent fraction of those within just a couple of minutes of passing me here. It's easier if you can manage to feel zero attachment to any of them. But then, an image forms in my mind that clearly depicts that he intends to keep it together and restrain himself from giving me the biggest bone-crushing hug, even though there's nothing more he could want in this moment. I look up, knowing immediately that it's Liam, and see my foster brother, fuck that, my brother, looking at me with unadulterated joy. A smile begins to curve my lips before I exercise all of my self-control to put my emotionless mask back in place. But he must have noticed in that split second, because I can see that he intends to give me shit about my emotional slip-up later when we can talk in private. I give him the smallest of nods and sense that he's surprised and grateful that I'd even give him that much acknowledgement with all of these other people around us. After giving his name for the record and stepping up onto the parapet, I can't help myself from turning to watch him cross. I even hold the shadows under the parapet ready to give the slightest of nudges if he were to need it, even though I know he won't. He holds his arms out just to be prudent, though he doesn't waver in the slightest as the wind howls around him, and he runs with sure, steady strides until he catches up to the candidate in front of him before she's even reached the halfway point. He slows his pace to match hers and bends his elbows so that his forearms nearly extend under her swaying, outstretched arms, and the image of his intention shows that he plans to catch her if she falls. I hope to gods that she doesn't. If he was seen catching her, leadership would execute them both, and yet they have no issue with a candidate touching another one on the parapet if the purpose is to knock them off. This fucking place. If our revolution succeeds in crushing the resurgence of Dark Wielders, or at least holding them off for more than a few years, maybe we'll have to consider establishing a war college in Eurasia that's not so goddamned evil. After I see Liam step down to safety on the far side of the parapet, I turn back to the line of candidates winding their way up the stairs and attempt to resume ignoring them. But it's harder now that Liam got me feeling all fucking sentimental. I've noticed through their subconscious motivations that at least half the women, and even a decent fraction of the guys, have taken notice of my looks, but the vast majority of them quash their nascent crushes the moment they register my rebellion relic. It's nothing I haven't been dealing with on a daily basis for the last 2 years, though. But then I sense someone doing more than simply noticing my looks. I keep my gaze lowered, but I can see an image in my mind showing that she's examining my hair and brows, my jawline, skin, and stubble. It's like this woman has skipped over a crush and went straight to being infatuated with one look at me. I cross my arms in front of me to try and convey a sense of authority, but that just makes her take note of the muscles in my arms and torso. I finally decide to look up at this woman whose intentions betray that she really is practically still a teenager, and I find myself as struck by her appearance as she is by mine. My gods, this woman is beautiful. Unlike the vast majority of other candidates, she already has the feel of a rider, not just because she's somehow gotten her hands on leathers already, whereas the rest are still in civilian clothes, but because I can feel her utter determination. I can't help spending a couple of moments luxuriating in her assessment of me and making a similar one of her before I hear, "Ready for the next one, Ryerson?" Suddenly I feel her intentions do a complete about-face. She realizes who I am, has been warned about me, and I can see her absolute fear. "You ready for this, Sgaeyl?" the candidate in front of her asks. I snap my gaze back to her in time to see her whisper, "No, shit." But I couldn't care less. "Sgaeyl," I say, stepping toward her. I instantly abandon my assessment of her attractiveness to gauge how big of a job I'll have on my hands keeping her alive to finally be rid of the debt I owe her fucking mother. Good gods, she barely even reaches my sternum. She's tiny. She has no hope of lasting a year in the Rider's Quadrant. She nods once. Is this really the piece of filth that I'm supposed to keep alive for the next year so that she can eventually carry on the insidious work done by the likes of General Sgaeyl and Colonel Markham? My loathing must be obvious on my face because I can see that she senses it. "Violet?" the candidate in front of her asks her. There it is. Total confirmation with the first name, not to mention the hair. No last-ditch hope that this was some distant cousin with the same surname, who I would have known about from all the research I've done into her over the last 6 months, or any other saving grace. "You're General Sgaeyl's youngest," I accuse. "You're Fen Ryerson's son," she throws back at me. How the fuck am I going to keep her alive? As far as I know, no one this short has ever made it up the gauntlet, and even if she did, she's so petite that she clearly wouldn't be physically capable of staying seated during flight maneuvers, so what dragon would choose her as their rider? Not to mention the 100 other ways she's liable to get herself killed. It also doesn't help that I'd love to watch her die simply because I know who it would hurt most. Your mother captured my father and oversaw his execution, I say, the anger in my voice making it sound almost like a growl. Her stare is pure rage as she counters with, Your father killed my older brother. Seems like we're even. Hardly, is all I can say, as I obviously can't tell her that Brennan is alive and well. I look her over. Despite being sexy, her body will be nothing but a liability when it comes to trying to keep her alive. Her physique could hardly be more different from what I've gleaned about Mira's. Your sister is a writer. Guess that explains the leathers. Guess so, she retorts, as we continue glaring at each other, but I can sense her focus returning to the parapet. The parapet? I won't have to follow through with this impossible mission if she doesn't make it across. And not only do I not have to help, I actually can't. General Sgaeyl agreed that she'd have to do at least that much on her own. Maybe I could even get away with being unhelpful. But would I actually do that? Punishing children for the crimes of their parents is the Navarian way, not the Tyrish. I clench my fists in frustration. She notices, and I instantly see an image of her intention to fight back, thinking I'm going to throw her off the turret. Clearly she doesn't really know anything about me, having only heard of the ruthless reputation I've so carefully cultivated. You all right? The candidate in front of her asks, and I can feel the woman's subconscious motivation to protect Sgaeyl. Your friends? I ask, glancing at the other woman. We met on the stairs, she responds confidently. I try to read into her attachment to Sgaeyl and only come up with an image of shoes. Glancing down at both their feet, I note the mismatch, and I'm able to sense that Sgaeyl switched a boot with the other woman to give her better grip. At the cost of her own. I unclench my fists. Interesting. Are you going to kill me? She accuses, with entirely more bravado than she's earned. I consider her carefully as the rain that's been threatening finally begins to fall, soaking everyone on the tower. Apparently the general isn't going to use her storm-wielding signet to make it any easier for her daughter to cross the parapet. She's really serious about Violet having to do at least that much on her own. A scream rips through the rain from the parapet behind me, and I watch Sgaeyl intently to see how she'll react to the man who I can sense has no chance of saving himself. Pull yourself up, Dylan! The other woman yells. Oh, gods! Sgaeyl gasps, covering her mouth and watching in abject terror as the man falls to his death. Even if I'm not as twisted as her mother, she doesn't need to know that. And even if I won't cause it, I can at least hope that she'll fall of her own accord so I can keep my focus on the marked ones in the revolution without the constant distraction of keeping her alive. Why would I waste my energy killing you when the parapet will do it for me? I inquire, allowing my smile to spread menacingly. Your turn. Hey, I hope you're liking my fanfiction. I just wanted to make clear that all rights belong to Rebecca Yarros and thank her for creating this incredible world and characters to have fun with. If you'd like to read along or would just prefer a text version of this story, you can find it online at Archive of Our Own. There will be a link to it in the video description below. And if you want to be notified whenever I upload the video for the next chapter, make sure to subscribe and click the bell. Thanks.